Untitled. My name is Rochelle, and today I'm going to walk you through setting up an online immersion Uno game. It's a lot of fun. It's a great language learning activity. And I'll try to give you tips as we go through to make your game as smooth as possible, even on your first attempt. So, what I like to do is give participants as much information as possible ahead of time. I realize that they don't always have time to look at it, but some will. And I like for things to be very clear because I think that if you're doing immersion, having everything set out ahead of time makes it easier for participants to feel comfortable, to feel safe, and to fully participate in using the language. And so there's a few things I like to send them ahead of time. One is a vocab list for things they're going to want to say while they're playing. One is information on what the game looks like, and I have a video that I've made for participants, and there's a link to it underneath this video, and you can share that if you decide to use the same platform that I'm using. And then also, I like to make a way for them to ask questions that may be beyond their language level. So I'm pretty strict about no spoken English in the game, but depending on the level, if they're newer learners, I may say, but if you have a technical question, you can ask it in the chat box or something like that, just in case, because, you know, I want everyone to have a great experience. The thing I try to avoid most of all is anyone having a really negative experience. And so those are my two main goals. And so allowing them to ask me and not have group discussions in the language, but you're able to ask me a question in English in typing only. So if they get stuck or lost or upset, that there's an option to make them feel comfortable. The program I like to use is a website called unofreak.com. And the reason I like it is you can have up to 10 players in a room. It doesn't require an app or anything like that. And it's pretty clear. So it tells players what cards they can play when it's their turn. It keeps track of how many cards each person has. It can be played on any computer. So, you know, you may choose another option. There's lots of apps and things like that. But this is, I find, good for, you know, the diverse group that you might have in Anishinaabemowin immersion and their technical requirements. So what I do is I start the Zoom call, and from that, I send a link to the players. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to set up our game so that we have the correct link to send to all the players so they can join our game. So you start by going to unofreak.com/create. And if you want, you can also go to the home page and click join a game bracket play. So this is your first page. You want to make a name. I usually try to use Anishinaabemowin word, but since we're, well, what will I make it? Okay, so I'm just making it actually Anishinaabemowin. And you want to click here, hide from lobby. And this is an important step because if you don't click that, then any person who wants to play Uno can see your game at the page we were just on and join it. And we don't want that because we're going to be playing much slower than they will. And so you just click on this box. That's great. And press create game. You can make a password if you want. I haven't had an issue so far with needing one, but I'll update the comments below if that ever becomes an issue. And so you click create. So it's just making my game now. And so this is the waiting room. And I'll show you a few things to make note of. Right here is the in-game chat. When players enter, I ask them to put their name in there, just so I can easily see what number corresponds with what person. And that's relevant because you'll be able to see all the players here. And if it's someone's turn and they've forgotten, it's a lot nicer to be able to say, Gintam Rochelle, rather than Gintam and go to Aswainan and Nij. So that's one thing I like to do when they first enter. The other thing is to make sure that everyone gets in. Once you start the game, people cannot enter. So you have to get everybody into this lobby page and before you press start game. So as people, first we got to send them the link. So here's the link to your game. And what I do is I highlight it and press copy link location. And the reason is one day I just pressed copy and the question mark came up as a space. And I don't know if that was just a browser issue, but ever since then I've copied the actual location. And then you can send it to everyone who's in your Zoom call. And I just do that using the chat function in Zoom. So the way I usually do it is I set up this game and then go back to my Zoom call, welcome everyone there, share the link, and then check that they all made it safely to the game. So it's possible that the link may not work depending on how someone has their browser set up, and it's not easy to be able to tell how each person has their computer configured. So the other option to get people into the waiting room is to have them go to the unofreak.com page, right where the same one that we started the game on. But rather than press create game, they go underneath. There's a link that says join a game. And so when they join a game, they just need that title that you gave to your game. And so I will put in the room name, which we had made Anishinaabemowin. And then they click right there, join game. And so now you can see I have 2 players and they're both listed here. This little X, if someone had trouble and they ended up opening multiple games and I knew that this person was actually one of my players who, you know, was using a second browser and they were already here under another name, I could just kick them out by pressing this X. And like I mentioned before, it just makes for a smoother game. If you have inactive players, they bring the game to a halt and you can't kick them out once you start the game. So it's good to make sure all your ducks are in a row here before starting the game. And if you're playing with quite new learners, you may decide to use English up until this point. So make sure everyone's set, we know our names. I've checked that you all have your vocab sheet or anything like that that I want you to have. And now, once I start this game, no one's allowed to use English. You can use these games to learn a whole bunch of different things. And I have a vocab sheet from the Little Traverse Bay Band, which I like to use as a general Uno sort of jumping off point. But for more advanced learners, you can certainly challenge them to, use some of those more technical things that they may not, be able to come up with on the fly. So once I start the game, it looks like this. And so you're aware, everyone will see a screen similar to this, but their hand will be different. So this person's hand has their cards. This is the cards in the middle of the table. So the last card played and the draw pile. And you can see my phone has a different set of cards. And here are all of your players, the number of cards they have. This is the chat where I've asked people in the lobby to put their name so I can say, oh, Rochelle, Gintam. And this yellow outline is cards that you can play. So it won't let you do anything that isn't in the rules, but it also allows you, it tells you which cards you can play. And that's a nice option. That's one of the things I like about this, because you may have students who haven't played this game ever or haven't played it in a long time. And if they have to start asking, oh, can I play a 3? What about this? If there starts to be confusion, it can be stressful for some students. And so this is, a really supportive way to start out. This card, when you play it, it allows you to select the colors going forward. And so you want them to say the color name, but also, again, very user-friendly. So let's do yellow. Oh, kainon jira, uzalaze. And you can see here, there's a running list of every card that's been played. Now I'm going to run through this a little bit quickly to be able to show you some other. So this card means that my opponent has played something that it means that I miss my turn. As well as this one, which causes you to change direction. Now, one thing that is important to know is, so here I can see that both players have 2 cards. And if you have 2 cards, before you lay the second last card, you have to press, I'll show you on my phone, this little button pops up at the top, and it would be here on the computer browser. So you have to click Uno, call Uno, before laying your second last card. So my opponent just caused me to pick up 4 cards. That also allows them to choose the color going forward. And so once someone finishes, the first person wins, they're kicked out. They go back to the waiting room where we started. But what they can do is right near this sort card button, we'll pop up one that I think says spectate or something to that idea. So they can click back in and watch other people play. The one thing I would warn, I usually like to end the game after the second or maybe third person has won. The challenge is you don't want it to go on too long that people get bored or stressed. And sometimes Uno games can go on quite a while. Everyone gets down to 1 and then back up to 7 multiple times. And so usually you can keep a pretty good energy. Certainly the first player to win, usually the second. And then either there or after the third or fourth, I would call it, depending on how things are going. For students you may be running it with who are new to it or are early learners, I would say cutting it off earlier is better, just to make sure that it ends on a high note. And it's really important to get people, when they're leaving the game, to click on this leave game box up at the top. If they don't, what will happen is when they try to come back, if you set up a second game or they want to play with someone else, they'll come back to this game. And until they click the leave game, that could impact the ease with which they get into future Uno games. So those are the main things that I think are important to keep in mind when you're playing with people or when you're facilitating a game. They're going to be looking to you for, direction, and so being familiar with these aspects can be very helpful. I will include information to get to the Little Traverse Bay Band. If you're interested in using their vocab sheet, you can contact them and ask them to send it to you. The other options, a lot of communities have local translations for decks of cards and things like that. And so you may be able to get one that's a bit more tailored to your community. But yeah, I hope you and your immersion group really enjoy your Uno experience.